help you transform leadership insights into growth momentum. And in this case, we're going to be talking with Jared Faris. He's a sales leader at HMB here in Columbus, Ohio. Welcome, Jared.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Great to have you with me, as always, is Chris McAllister. Welcome, Chris. Glad to have you, my man.
Good to be here.
Yeah. Well, we're lucky to have really a great guest today because Jared has a great background, diverse background, and because of his expertise and competency in helping all the folks around him at his company, he was offered the opportunity to take a sales leadership role. How uncommon it is to have somebody who's competent and capable be given a sales leadership role just because of your ability to help folks close deals, which is really cool. I'd like you to share, maybe give our guests more, or our listeners more insight into how you got there. But why don't we just start off with introducing yourself and maybe giving us a little insight into what HMB is all about.
Sure. Yeah. So that'd be great. So as James said, my name is Jared Faris. My background's in technology. So my background is, grew up as a web developer and a technologist. And I've been with HMB for about 7 years. The way I would describe us, I would do it in terms of our customers. So we talk to tons of like mid-size and small enterprise companies, and a theme that kind of constantly comes up is that they're growing, right? They're doing well, but they know they're not growing to the level they could. There's something holding them back, and sometimes it is the technology. Either they're not leveraging technology to the fullest extent, or sometimes when I'm talking to CEO, I'll say, hey, do you feel like your IT is just like a black box you put money into, and then occasionally things of value pop out and you can't really explain it? And I get a lot of nods, right? Like a ton of nods from that. We exist to sort of to fill that gap, help them leverage technology to meet their growth goals, to remove that anchor that's slowing them down. And so we use modern technologies like the cloud and automation to do that. But we've been around for 25 years, so we've evolved as the market's evolved, and we exist to help our customers continue on that path to keep growing. And then, my job now is to work with sales and marketing to make sure we can go find those customers to help out and serve, and that's what I do. So.
Yeah. And how many consultants do you guys have right now?
I don't know the exact headcount. I'd say probably about 200. That's roughly the size we're at.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And what I love about the story is, your business is so focused on technology and delivering stuff. But I think what I've learned about you, what makes you really good at what you do and an asset to the sales team is your ability to not lead with the product, but to really help CEOs and leaders in the organizations you work with focus on the problems that they come to the table with and really help them understand what the real problem is that they face.
Yeah, and that wasn't something, I didn't start out that way, right? So as a technologist, the shiny things I could build was what I cared about, right? And then over time realized that no one actually wants to pay for technology. They want to pay for outcomes. And, our customers span, 30 industries. The problems they're solving are different every time. Now we may use the same tools to help them, but ultimately they want to, produce more products or reach more customers or do something else that has nothing to do with what we do, right? We're just a servant to help them out.
With that gradual learning, was there ever like one moment or a few moments that was a little bit more dramatic, like you left a meeting and it didn't go like you thought, or somebody, maybe a mentor, was like, hey man, come on, Jared, and I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I can't think of an exact meeting, but I do remember times, so where my boss, who's been in consulting his whole career, we'd walk out of a meeting when I was pretty new to the company, and he'd be like, that was great, but the person across the table didn't have a clue what you're talking about. Because I was in the weeds, right? It's like, oh, shoot. And, those were recoverable errors, but I learned a lot thinking about the space they're in. They're thinking about education or healthcare or something, and I need to connect with what they're trying to do. And I was talking about the stuff I geek out about, right? And so it didn't, that over time I learned that I can't think of a meeting, but I know that happened a number of times.
Yeah. That's so good. I mean, it's so easy to get caught up in what we're excited in and we're missing the other person. Huge.
Right. So it's that real customer-centric perspective, which I'm sure in the tech world, the business leaders really appreciate. tell me, let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to when so you've been in the role for about a year or less than a year. What were the conditions that the business was facing? What do you think was behind the decision to pull someone like you out of the delivery space, the solution space, to run sales versus going out looking for a traditional sales leader or someone we might think of as a traditional sales leader?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was in the conversations when we talked about that. So my role before, I was our vice president, basically in charge of all of our consultants. So of all the different disciplines, I had come up through AppDev, but I was responsible for that component. And I remember us talking about whether we should go out and when we kind of redefined our go-to-market strategy, and we knew we needed to get better alignment in sales so that they could bridge that conversation gap between what we do and what our customers need, and not just sell our services, right? And we talked about, should we go find a sales leader? Should we not? Should we move somebody around? And what we really decided was our sales team's really good. I mean, they're good at talking to customers. They understand what we do. They really just need systems to support them. It was less about having to train them on fundamentals and more about just building up a system that would make them successful. And that's where we kind of made the decision that with my background in building systems, I could go in there and kind of just live in that world full time. So I was always working with them and supporting them. My job just shifted to being that full time and helping them to grow. And so we talked about going external, but I think pretty quickly the rest of the leadership team, almost like they turned to look at me and I said, well, okay, I'll try it out. And I think it's been successful and it's been a lot of fun too.
Yeah. Chris, this is where I need you to pipe in, man, because we talk all the time about leadership and the flexibility that's required when you're in a leadership role. And here we have a situation where, Jared was really successful in one role, and because of that competency and, an observed need in another area of the business, the request came in, hey, we'd like you to step into a spot that we think you can be successful, but a spot also where, there's a lot of gaps. I mean, from a leadership perspective, how do you help folks think about how to make that transition effectively, or how to think about whether or not they're even up for it?
Yeah. And I want to come back around too, Jared, to a word you said, fun, because I don't think we use that word enough. We don't give ourselves permission to even think about what would be fun. But at the deep level, what people have to do is realize they're more than the role they're fulfilling. And so people conflate, who they are as a person with their role. So I'm only this. And this is how people lock in at a cruising altitude professionally, and they just get stuck there over and over again. I mean, it doesn't take that many years to master the skills of certain roles. How do people, live for decades on repeat, not experiencing a challenge because that's what they've locked into? And so at a deep level, that's what's happening. At a surface level, it's the courage, like Jared said, to step into it and try something new. And we're so afraid of failure because we care more about perfection than progress, that it's not even a part of corporate culture so often that we can allow these experiments. I mean, can you imagine what it would be like in a company if it was encouraged that try these roles out? We can move in and out of things. We'll figure it out as we go, embracing that. And then people get to figure out that alignment with meaning and purpose and joy. So at a deep and surface level, that's how it works. Jared, for you, what was fun or what was going on that was more fun than maybe what was happening before?
That's a great question. I don't know if I've thought about it that way before, but I think I had learned over the years. I still think of myself as a technical person, but I more and more was working with customers on their problems, right? So I was always more interested in solving their problems and leaning really hard into what they were trying to do. And so moving fully into that space was enjoyable. And there's something about the sales, the things we're doing. We are trying to win. We're trying to win business, right? But it's not like they lose when we win. So if we sell a deal, it's because we found the right solution for somebody and we collaborated and figured out, something that was going to make their lives better. That's pretty fulfilling. And so I don't know, it was enjoyable. It's also, I'm the kind of person who really likes to learn new skills. And, even though I was sales adjacent, you really quickly learn a whole bunch of stuff you didn't know about, or you were aware of it existing, but didn't, see the insides of it and the intricacies. And so that was a fun challenge to have to, really immerse myself in a new space and grow. And you mentioned people doing the same thing for 10 years. I don't understand that. I don't get how that could be. Maybe you have other priorities, right? But for me, it's like, give me something entirely new. And thankfully for the company, give me a safe space to do it. I knew if I didn't succeed, I still had a seat, right? I would either go back to what I was doing before or have a new role. So I had a safe place to do something new, and I had a lot of trust built up. And, I'm lucky to have that too. And I don't know that everyone's in that position, but I bet more people are than realize it and could take risks and, sink or swim, and if you fail fast and learn from it. And so,
yeah,
it's that challenge that's, I think, so much fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think so often, they don't know till they ask, and people assume. It's kind of like when my daughter years ago had a Halloween costume that she had put together herself. It was really cool. It's called Future Girl. And this is when she was at that younger age, and it was so fun and awesome. And then a friend asked her what she's going to be for Halloween. She said, a future girl. And the friend goes, what's that? And so then, because she had to explain it, she didn't want to do it. So we had to go get a costume at Target late at night that was, the safer costume. And she's so brave and so amazing in so many ways. She's a warrior. This is just one story standing out. But in that moment, it was for me to try to help her see nobody cares about your costume. They all care about the costume they have on. And do you see theirs? And what so happens in corporate world, I've noticed just the conversations, people think that other people are watching them, just waiting for them to fail so they can like pounce on that mistake. And for sure, there are some egregious cultures out there. But by and large, like you said, they often assume they may not have that chance when you don't know till you ask. So pretty cool that you had that. But also, I think for those that are listening, really cool for them to hear that and go, maybe that's something I need to float up the chain and see. Yeah. I could test that out. Any advice you'd give them to kind of test that out, especially maybe in sales?
Yeah, I'd say, I bet most people don't even think about what skills they want to build. I think I was like that for a long time, just kind of coasting and had a lot of good opportunities, but they were sort of luck, right? It's the right opportunity at the right time. And very fortunate to have that. But it wasn't, at some point in my career, I realized I should actually think about what skills I want to build and then, talk to my boss about wanting those skills, right? And so, I was interested in learning more about finance and the business of what we do and not just the technology. And I think part of the reason when we decided we needed this role filled, that people looked at me is because they knew I was interested in building the skills that would align with it, right? And had an open conversation. And it wasn't a conversation of like, I'm going to go elsewhere and look for these skills. It's more like, hey, can I help with that? Can I get involved in this other thing? Those are interesting to me. I don't know how that works. I want to learn that. I'm not sure that's particularly sales related. I think that's for anybody. Mm-hmm. But I will say for me, I realized, the revenue side of our business, the front end of our business is critical, and having a better understanding of that is going to make me more valuable no matter what role I fill. Right. And if I go into something else, maybe I have an operations responsibility a year from now, I know I'm going to be more valuable to the company because I understand how we go to market. And so that's never going to serve me poorly. And so I think because I've been thinking about that and talking about it and looking in little ways to build those skills up, when the opportunity arose, people pointed to me and said, hey, you'd be a good person to fill the spot. I think if you haven't thought about where you want your career to go, or at least broad terms, that's probably a pretty important step.
I love that. I'll comment too much.
No, it's cool. Chris, I think what I love to do is summarize what we're learning here. And I think, Chris and I, we talk a lot about mindset, skill set, tool set, right? Tool sets are important for reinforcing the skills that we deliver, and skills are important for executing a best practice, if you will. But what you've demonstrated is you didn't need to have either of those things to make the transition and to make it successful. You needed to have the right mindset. The mindset opened you up to all the possibilities for the skills that you would develop and the tools that would come later.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The growth mindset too, right? I can do it. I can do something I've never done before. I can be successful or fail in small ways quickly where I learn, right? Where it's not mission critical. Maybe that's an optimistic mindset too, but it's like, of course I could go figure this out, right? And I got a whole bunch of people that can help me, so it's not all on me.
Right.
And being able to do a complex, valuable skill, at a high level, that makes you so much more integral to the enterprise, the team, the organization, is built on learning 7 simpler skills that you're piecing together, or 3 or 4 skills. And so I love that you brought attention to that, thinking through the skills that you want to build. I know in my own life, and I don't know how I got lucky to get this mind. Like in college, I was like, oh, I want to learn that skill. That's going to be valuable. I want to learn that skill. I didn't exactly know I was going to use it, but I just wanted to start learning these skills. And then years later, you're doing something at a high level that's very valuable. And it's like, whoa, this is those 7 things combined. So really, really cool that you started to look at that and think through that. That's awesome. And the fun part applies there. It's like, I may not want the composite picture, but I can try to find joy, which is obviously a mindset, in learning those skills, because when this pieces together, I'm going to be glad that I persevered in that. And what do they say? Like after 40, it's hard to do that. And being after 40 in my own life, I can't imagine shutting down. That would make me so sad. So props to you on that.
I appreciate that. I think, I don't remember where I read this, but it talked about, if you're really good at something, you're valuable. If you're really good at 2 things, you're like 10 times as valuable. Only when they apply, but when you can find the place where those 2 things align, you stand out. And if you mentioned, if you get 7, 8, 9 skills piled on, there's all sorts of problems you can solve by synthesizing those skills together in ways you may not have anticipated. And I'm with you. I'm always, there's something new I'm excited about that I'm diving into, and I'm not going to get expert level. I'm not always going to have 10,000 hours in each of them, or however many hours it takes. But even, getting 20% of the skill a lot of times sets you apart from a whole bunch of other people who don't have any of it. And then you have a foundation to dive in deeper when you need to. I call it chronic curiosity. I'm interested in everything. And everything's exciting. And then sometimes the problem is just figuring out how to narrow it down to what you really need to focus on versus, almost like too much to learn. Right. So I'm fortunate, this opportunity came along, but I also was trying to build these skills up over time leading to it. So that kind of lined up nicely.
That's awesome. Oh, Jimmy, if I don't throw us off, I want to ask one quick follow-up to that.
I'll bring us back because I got to follow up too. This is too good to pass up.
I'm going to take it out there. So curious for you, Jared, if you've noticed this, like if you get, I'm going to create 3 distinctions here: beginner, pro, mastery in any field. Beginner chef is fumbling through, pro chef needs the right tools and ingredients, master just works with what's in the kitchen. If you get to mastery in one level, which I know is an audacious thought for a brain to have, but if you get to mastery in one level, do you think it's easier or quicker, not that it's easier or quicker to get to mastery in another field because you know the context of what that feels like? Where would you land with that? Just curious.
Yeah, I would say it's easier. I mean, it's certainly not harder to get mastery in another field. Partly it might be because there are shared concepts, so you're not learning everything new, right? You take things with you that are relevant. But I think there's also, if you're in a mindset of learning, you get good at learning. It's a skill that you can develop, and you can learn the next thing quicker. And so, I know people. My dad's an example. He's an electrician, and he can work on motors and other stuff too, because once he learned how to fix the first 4 types of things he worked on, learning the 5th one wasn't like starting net new. And he can fix anything, right? So I think, if you've gained mastery, or even you said that pro level, getting beginner level in something else is probably a lot quicker too, right? You have context and you can map things together. I've never put the effort in to do this, and I should, so I don't have mastery of multiple languages, but I know people, and I've met people who have, after they learned their 4th language, the 5th language was not very difficult at all. And I think it's the same thing, right? And I should probably go ahead and do that at some point.
Yeah, call us when you learn those extra 3 languages, man. It sounds audacious for sure. What's really interesting to me about this topic is, Chris, we talk a lot about teams and team building. And Jared, one of the things that we've observed and that science tells us is that when you have diversity in the work experiences, the work styles, the competencies and capabilities across a team, you have a team that's agile. You have a team that can be resilient in the face of change And we've just been through an enormous amount of change. And when we talk to teams who are struggling and we assess them or analyze them, we see that they have a lack of diversity, actually specialization in a couple areas that served them well when times were good and now creates huge barriers when times aren't. And I'm taking this concept of diversity and applying it to skills. The conversation that you and Chris were having around, the diversity of what you learn and the diversity of what you find yourself interested in, the diversity of what you invest your time in understanding. What's interesting to me is that when you compare that to sales leadership, right? There is a curriculum for sales leaders, period. But I think all of us can point to successful people in any role, especially in a sales role, where we see the folks that are the most successful are the folks who are the most interesting, who have that diversity of experience and perspective, who can tell a crazy story and bring it back to a very potent and specific perspective that you never would have imagined or you never could have created in your own mind. I wonder if that rings true for you guys.
Yeah, it does. I think individually it matters, and as a team, something that's been interesting for this, we all went down to lockdown, right? We went, kind of from all on site most of the time to all remote, over the course of a couple of days, right? Having people on the team who had worked in, geographically dispersed offices. We have one sales rep who had been on part of a multinational company, right? He had a lot of experience working with people who he didn't see and maybe had never met. Another person who worked at a startup that, probably, I don't know if they ever had an office. That was super valuable, like tactically, right? For it's like, hey, we have people who've experienced this because they came from different backgrounds. We also have people on our team who've sold products, which is very different from selling services. And as we kind of developed more advanced solutions, having somebody who sold something that was more like an off-the-shelf thing, it's really valuable for the rest of the team to understand how you sell products is different. And then people from different backgrounds and cultural backgrounds who add to the team and help us just understand how to talk to and connect to different people too. It's hard to see an area where diversity doesn't help. I think it helps with everything, right? Whether it's, where you're from or skills you have or education you have. And our team is pretty, a lot of unique people, right? It's not like cookie cutter. And I think that's been a benefit of ours. And it's, probably multiplicative, not just additive to the team. So I think what you're saying resonates with me completely.
That's awesome. It makes me think of, there's a crossroads. It's like, be mad people aren't interested or be interesting. And you don't even have to chase an external life of adventure to be interesting. That's the nomenclature. You can be fascinated with your interior world and explore like crazy and, come back with the goodies. And for me, everything we were talking about, listening, customer centric, Jared, your journey and how, you were leaving those meetings and you were getting that mentoring that was helping you to listen. It's still this razor's edge of listening and hearing them and hearing how they describe it and how they experience the problem, but also putting something on their horizon that they want to gravitate towards, whether it's you personally and relationally being interesting, or you are giving them a wider horizon and perspective than what they had considered before. And I see that, I see people today, especially wish their thing would go viral or make this thing go big and hit the top of Product Hunt or whatever, and how to engineer that rather than just focusing on consistently being interested in others and being interesting. And it's such a beautiful tension when you're both of those. That's great.
Yeah, I hadn't really connected these dots, but I would work really well with technical buyers because I was a technical person, right? So when I was in the room with them, we were talking the same language. And what I realized was I just got excited about their problems. And if I had a solution in mind, I got excited about that. And then they got excited and kind of came along with me, right? Mm-hmm. So the growth was having to realize that I have to be able to do that to non-technical people who, are higher up the business. But it's the same thing. If I'm excited about their problem and think that I can help them, that gets their interest, right? If they're thinking, hey, you can help me with something that I can't solve myself, that probably makes me very interesting to them very quickly. And so it's not necessarily anything about my experience or history or fun stories I have to tell. In that case, it's really people are very interested in making something hard in their life easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they've shown, I read a study this a couple years ago now, that subconsciously the human brain hears if somebody doesn't believe what they're saying and is nervous and their mouth gets dry, and that they're subconsciously interpreting that and forming conclusions that are probably wrong. That person's just a little nervous, but they're forming conclusions that are breaking, deepening trust from forming. And so nothing better than the opposite of that, leaning into it, being interested, them hearing that in your voice, and then that subconscious connection happening.
And that only works if you have to believe what you're selling too, right? You couldn't, it has to be that, or it's not going to work. I mean, or you're really, really good at pretending, I guess, but.
Yeah.
Right.
I always test myself with products on that. We may have talked about this, Jimmy. I'm like, would I walk across the street and knock on my neighbor's door and tell them an excitement about this? Not that I'm saying they would want it, but I'm just saying it's a test of authenticity for me. So that's a good reminder.
Yeah.
That's a good challenge there. That's an interesting way to think about that.
I have too many weird, interesting ways of thinking about it.
and there are not enough podcasts in the day, man, to collect it all. But you're close, brother. You're close. You're close. We've got some time left in the conversation, and it would be irresponsible of me if I didn't put you on the spot, Jared, because what we're coming to the end of 2020. It's been a wild ride, and we're planning for 2021. And so, salespeople have been enduring, right, this shift that has been forced upon us in how we relate to our world. I wonder how that has affected you and your team. And then the second part of that is, how are you adjusting for 2021?
Yeah, it's been an interesting year because Q1 for us was probably record breaking. It was a great quarter, right? And then everything kind of changed. We've been fortunate. We didn't work with industries that were heavily impacted. Some of our customers are growing really well, and we've done a good job of finding new ways to just add value and serve the customers we've had. But it's been very difficult to get to open new doors. And I feel like for months, even customers that we were talking to, everything went crazy and they didn't have time to talk to anyone external. So projects were delayed, things were pushed. But we've been fortunate that we didn't shrink. We just, the growth curve kind of flattened for a while, and it could be much worse off. One of the things that benefited us, though, is, last year, before we had any idea this was going to happen, we realized to keep growing, we had to expand our digital marketing footprint. We had to get better at finding customers who weren't just relationships. We've got 25 years of relationships in town. You can do a lot of business that way, but you can only grow so far that way. And so we started to make some of those investments well before COVID. And that was really fortunate timing. No one predicted that, but it worked out well. And we've been able to connect with customers and demonstrate our expertise who we can't grab lunch with or get a coffee with. Now, I'd love to have both. And so I hope coming out of this that the relationships and referrals and those things come back, and we're good at finding customers we can serve that don't know who we are, and then that's just slingshot out of this. But it's been, if you'd asked me in March what I thought was going to happen, I kind of thought the floor was going to fall out, right? I thought all sorts of bad things were going to happen, and instead, kept our head above water. So I'm lucky there. But and looking back, I'm like, oh, we missed these opportunities. But in March, we were thinking this could be terrible for us. And I think because we're a technology company, because the companies we serve, all transitioned to remote, we've been really fortunate. And I know that's not the case for everybody. So it's not the year I wanted, but
right,
all things considered.
Or your team, right? I mean, it's tough on every member of the team. So I think it's interesting you mentioned digital footprint, and Chris and I have been pretty aggressively building our digital footprint as well. Just it's COVID time, and we're adjusting because we expect, as many folks do, this to continue into 2021. And what I found is, I'm a very relational person, so I built relationships by taking folks to breakfast and lunch, right? One of my differentiators was if we were out together, you never paid, right? That was my thing. And I really had a lot of fun doing that. And I was able to build strong relationships that way. And when everything went dark and we stayed home, I stayed home because I have an elderly mother-in-law living with us who is at risk. So I'm not going to take a risk and go out. And so we started building our digital footprint even more so. And while I didn't find, I'm curious what happened with your reps. While I didn't find anybody kind of reach out to me proactively because they saw a video or because they saw a post or one of the other pieces of content I put out there. But when we did talk, they remembered seeing my stuff. They would actually maybe even repeat what they heard me say or read. And what I've discovered is that investment has helped me to sustain those relationships through a digital format versus the face-to-face. And it makes getting and giving referrals easier for my customers, and it makes those initial conversations easier. I wonder what your experience has been with the digital investment and whether it's filtered through to the relationships your reps have had now and have been building with their customers.
Yeah, I think it has. And I think the reps are similar to you. It's right there. Our whole team, very social. I think right away we're like, this stinks. We're missing a lot of the things we liked with working with our customers, seeing them face to face, getting to kind of sharing their achievements. And so that was a tough transition for a group of people who were used to being out, like you said. And it hasn't replaced that. And some of we put a lot of events out, right? And our consultants do a ton of content. And we realized we could open this up. We do a lot of internal content too for training. And the rep started to say, hey, if I offer this to customers or to the outside world, it'll demonstrate our expertise, but it lets us, maybe invest in that customer in a way we can't do now through lunches or check-ins or other things. And so we just started to play around. And I think we want to maintain that, even if we can go back to having in-person meetings and seeing our customers and going to demos in person at things. I think we never want to get away from now these digital things we're doing to continue building that relationship. It's very hard to ever track, back to your question, it's very hard to ever track, like, we put out this video and then we got this lead, right? But it's clearly, like, if I follow a customer's journey through all the content we put out, you can see that they're interacting with us when we call them, but also, on the weekend they watch a video and they're interacting with us on LinkedIn. So it's definitely keeping the relationship warm. And I think it reinforces that, we're here to help them and deliver value, because a lot of these things we put on are free, and they're providing them with, skills or best practices and, not necessarily stuff we would have sold them anyway, just value adds, right? And so they get those, and I think it reinforces that we're a partner that they want to work with, that they can trust, that is out for their best interest. So I think these digital things are good. I kind of want to get back to a world where we have both and keep the things we've learned and get back to stuff we lost. Right. But they are good, and it kind of forced us to double down on them, which is, I guess, a silver lining.
How about you, Chris? I mean, what's your experience been?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just like, in a weird way, a path I started to go down a little bit, as you know, Jimmy, in 2018. And I too, I mean, there's a part of me that loves being with businesses, being in businesses and being with the people. And as I faced that crossroads, ended up just choosing to be in businesses more than build the digital footprint and landscape. So as I made that shift, as Jimmy and I have been walking through that together, I am a little bit pinching myself like, man, I wish I'd have done this sooner. Now, I will say yesterday I had this feeling of, oh my God, I don't want to be in front of a computer for another minute. I didn't pull the emergency parachute, but I felt it yesterday. I was going to text Jimmy and be like, I can't do anything tomorrow. No meeting, because I do miss that. And so I recognize I need to do it. I like doing it. I like what I'm doing right now with the digital footprint, but I too am excited for it to come back. But when it comes back, I don't want to lose the effectiveness and strategy that I've put into place that makes so much sense.
Right.
I want to balance it out better, more like probably 30-70 than where it was the opposite of that before. And I think what's going to be great for all of us when it opens up, I do think pent-up demand is going to flood. I don't think it'll last. I think the tide will go back out and it'll forever be different. But I do think there's going to be some pent-up demand that's going to come, and that'll be fun. because I'm hearing it. Are you guys hearing it from people? It's like, man, I can't wait till we can meet in person again. And I've noticed here that the last couple of weeks, the frequency has just increased. So bring it on, man. Let's get past this.
Right.
Yeah, everyone's looking forward to winter and thinking, I'm stuck inside. I can't wait till spring and things open back up. And on the other hand, I think my reps now are seeing. It used to be if you weren't local, you kind of, I don't know, we didn't have a big enough footprint for you to necessarily trust you could work with us if you didn't know who we were. The trust you got if you were in our market didn't exist if you were somewhere else. Well, everyone's demonstrated they can work remote now, and it's given them a confidence to call on customers and talk to them if they're not in our market, right? And so I think this has broadened their horizons of where they can prospect and who they can work with in a way that I don't think we'll ever go back either. So while, yeah, it's nice, it's great to be on site and be able to kind of work right alongside your customers, it's also great to realize if we have a problem, if we have a problem we can solve it for somebody in 4 states over. And so I don't want to lose that either, right? So kind of a balance of the two will be really good, I think, going forward.
That's a great insight. So it's different for us and how we do our job, but now we're seeing our customers evolve, which I hear you saying. They're more open now to those longer distance relationships. They're more trusting of leveraging technology that allows us to be virtual. So it doesn't matter whether you're across the street or across town or across the country.
Yeah, I mean, I could be in Florida right now. I could be in Alaska. It wouldn't really matter because you can't tell because it's a blank wall behind me. And I think that's something. I think we were moving in that direction, but it accelerated a whole lot this year.
Right. I love that. That's an opportunity. We've got a couple minutes left. I don't want to lose sight of 2021. I don't want you to pull out your crystal ball and make a prediction, but it would help our listeners if they got some insight into how are you as a leader leading a team of people who have the same question. What is the best way to approach 2021? Have you made a decision about that, or are you still considering things?
We're in the middle of doing a lot of planning right now, but I think we're going to invest heavily and continue to invest in our digital marketing and our digital strategy. So I think that's way more than we've ever done before. For individual reps, it's because they don't have the ability to build rapport kind of in person. They're relying a lot more on building expertise and listening to customers more and learning about problems and having more sophisticated conversations. And so I think we're going to continue to invest in that. And next year is going to be, our service offerings have evolved and we figured out, what's going to be relevant at least through the first, half of next year. What are the highest value things? We're learning how to talk to customers about how those will solve their problems. So I don't have concrete things, but I think we're planning on at least the first half of next year being a lot like this year. And we've had time to reflect now and say, what would we do differently? What should we have done in March in retrospect? It's not too late to, keep going down those routes. So I'm not sure I answered your question, James, but it's still, there's still a lot of unknowns. We had a quarterly meeting virtually last night, and some of our 2021 slides had big question marks on them because we still don't know exactly what's going to happen. But I do think, there's going to be a point where everyone kind of slingshots out, and there's going to be, I think potentially middle of next year, a lot of demand for a lot of services, a lot of people who have stalled because of uncertainty, but have stuff they have to get done and money to spend. So we're kind of planning on that too. I don't know when it'll be, so.
Well, what I got out of that, what I liked about your explanation is that you may not know what's going to happen next year, but you know what you can do about being prepared, right? So you weren't prepared in March, but you have at least the opportunity to prepare now. And I think that's a great positive kind of mindset to have walking in to a year where anything could happen. Well, at least now we have time to get our ducks in a row and not just place a bet, but actually make investments that we know are going to work regardless of what happens. Chris, I know you work with a lot of Fortune 500 as well as startups and everything in between. What are you seeing and hearing from the folks that you're working with?
The last few weeks, it's been like interest has just done this. People reaching out, taking meetings, so I think people are getting excited to dive back in. They're nervous about obviously a couple of things in fourth quarter that we can all imagine what those are. but they're trying to get some stuff in place for 2021. And so that part's been exciting. I mean, it was like a switch got turned on a couple weeks ago. And that part, is really giving me a lot of hope. So we'll see. Yeah,
that's interesting. I have seen that. So we've been asking for a while, to talk to our customers about their 2021 plans, because we want to align with them, right? We want to help them. Mm-hmm. And, for most of the fall, it was, we still don't know. We still don't know. And we are starting to get some of those meetings where they're starting to, think about concrete things next year. And so it does seem like something is tipped, but it's not, and it's not this, every customer kind of is tipping at a different point, but there does seem to be a trend where people are saying, okay, we can't just pause everything forever. Let's figure out where we're going to make progress and make investments.
Well said.
And that's a great note for us to wrap up on, Jared. Thank you very much. So we've been talking with Jared Faris, sales leader and VP of Solutions at HMB here in Columbus, Ohio. And with me has been Chris McAllister. This is James Royce. Thank you for being with us for Moving the Rock. And we do this every week, so join us next week. Until then, much success. Take good care.